Hello, welcome to class. It's time for week 4 assignments for DBA760. Well, Tom Cruise may have to wear shades, but I don't have to wear shades. So let's take a look at the readings first. Here we're going to be moving away from Porter and starting to look at the resource-based view or resource-based theories of strategic management. And we're going to be using J. Barney as the kind of primary school of thought. Now, this resource-based view existed prior to Barney, and he built upon what was there. But he's been a strong proponent of this particular view, and he's written a lot and is still publishing, so it's a good school of thought to work from. Okay, so here you have your required readings. The discussion is going to be, of course, about the resource-based view of strategic management. And I would encourage you again to use not only the required readings, but this week, but also what we've been talking about in previous weeks by comparing and contrasting the different views, how one is different from the other, and how this is going to lead to future developments. And later in weeks 6 and 7, we'll be looking at new developments in the field, many of which are based upon the resource-based view. Okay, so it's important to kind of understand the origins of this. We're also going to be having a paper, another paper already, comparing the works of Mintzberg, Porter, and Barney. So we're going to be looking at the work that we've been studying, readings we've been studying over the past few weeks, and again trying to synthesize the viewpoints in the literature. Again, not just telling me what the theories are, because I know what they are, but adding your own perspective, coming up with something new. Again, in preparation for what you need to do when you write your dissertation, you got to come up with something new out of the existing set of ingredients that you've got on your shelf. Well, for this class, our existing ingredients are Mintzberg, Porter, and Barney, and other people who've written related to these particular topics. So that's the process we're going through. I think because now we're going to be working with multiple schools of strategic management thought, it's a good time to introduce the concept of bodies of literature and streams of literature, because many times these terms are used interchangeably and they're not really the same thing. So let's start out with bodies of literature, and specifically social sciences, such we're in business, which is considered a field in social sciences, as is psychology, as is sociology, anthropology, political science. So anything that has to do with people is considered in the social sciences, at least outside of the medical perspective. And bodies of literature will develop around some foundational theory, like Porter's theory of 5 forces, or Bass's transformational leadership theory, Friedman's economic theory of efficient markets. And once these theories have been accepted and been around for a while, they will attract other literature, which starts to form a body of literature. And they may come from different fields. In social sciences, you may be reading about strategic management, and then find that there are people writing from the field of sociology or political science having to do with that. So if it's a positive thing and it is considered valid to a certain extent, then it will attract other people writing about the same topic, and that makes the body kind of literature grow exponentially. If it's been around a long time, now Porter's 5 forces have been around for more than 30 years, transformational leadership more than 30 years, Friedman like 40 years. So if it's been around a while, it's going to grow its own schools of thought and bodies of literature under this general umbrella. Okay, so in the same way that strategic management kind of evolved in the 1960s, now we have different schools of thought related to strategic management that collect their own bodies of literature. And eventually, because it attracts a lot of writing, you may have millions of articles related to it. So it's impossible to kind of work with a body of literature when you start trying to develop a research gap and you try to develop a research project. You really have to focus it down and pick out of this body of literature what we call a stream of literature. So you're going to start out with a theory, some aspect of a theory from the body of literature. Then you're going to focus on one aspect of that theory and start to break it down into more narrow definitions of exactly what you want to work with. And this will be somewhat driven by what your interest is, what your research topic is, to which literature you need to be able to support it. So eventually you're going to be focusing on small, narrow focuses of definition of terms in a group of what we call majority literature, people who tend to agree and have written in agreement about a certain thing, and that's going to form the basis of your literature stream. Eventually, when you finished it, it will lead directly into the research gap that you're planning on addressing. Okay, you've gotten down to the point where the terms are defined clearly, that research that's been done has been shown to lead to a certain point, and now you're going to turn that into something new. Okay, so that's the purpose of the stream of literature, is to show that you have found a valid area of research that's been supported by prior research. It hasn't, what you're talking about doing hasn't been done before. Okay, and you're showing that through your stream of literature. As I said before in the presentation about the dissertation process, you're going to need two, because you're going to be synthesizing two separate streams of literature, but you need to know how to do one first. So what's involved to develop a stream of literature? Well, you need to start out with a general awareness of what the theories are and what the literature is in the field that you're interested in. That's what you do with your concentration classes. And then as you begin to sort through that and figure out something you're particularly interested in, now you want to think of how that particular literature is going to lead to an area you're interested in working, lead to the gap. So you need to know where to start. What's the foundational literature that's necessary? How far do you have to go back? How much related literature is required? As I said, in social sciences, there'll be a lot of writing from different fields. And so how far do you have to stray outside your own particular field to feel that you've covered the waterfront with regards to all the relevant material that's been written about the topic? Then how narrow do you have to focus it down? Okay, many times students feel like they can pick a large topic and then review 10 articles and feel that they've covered the field. Well, 10 articles may be where you want to end up, but that means you have to narrow the literature stream down to a very fine element where you found something new that very few other people have written about yet. So we also need to know what's considered the latest research. And so this should help narrow the stream, because as you work your way down, you'll find fewer people are writing about the tinier aspects of the theory that you want to work with. And also there has to be a rationale. Why is certain literature being included? Why is other literature not being included? And like I say, when we write, we need to connect the ideas together. There has to be transitions. There has to be a theme that connects the literature together that you're planning on using. You just don't throw it in there because, having 50 references looks better than having 30 references. There's got to be a reason that you're including this in your stream of literature. So let's look at it graphically. And for this example, I'll use leadership, since I have more students doing dissertations in leadership than anything else. Where we're going to start is with a general awareness of the literature, and all these smiley faces represent all the different theories of leadership that we'll be looking at. So we have great man theory, we have the traits theory, we have behaviors theory, we have contingency theories, we have transactional and transformational theories, we have servant theories, and a whole host of other leadership theories. That's one of the things about the field of leadership, is there's no shortage of theories. The problem is, which of these are you going to work with? Which ones are going to be important? So obviously these leadership theory encompasses a huge body of literature, and each one of these sub-theories also has its own body of literature. So we need to narrow it down. So we've got to determine which part of the theories would be important for our research. And just suppose that you find through all your studies that leadership competency theory turns out to be interesting to you, and you feel like it needs additional research in the area. So that's where you're going to focus. So then you need to determine where you're going to start with your stream. And if you do a little research, you find that competency theory is based upon work that came out of earlier trait theory literature and behavioral theory literature. So competency theory is kind of based upon the research that's been done earlier, and the primary people working in those areas, Roger Stogdill, White, and McClelland, in the late 1940s and early 1950s, they kind of made a revolutionary inflection point in leadership theory and said, we can now study this in a more scientific fashion. So that created a whole new area or direction in leadership research. So we got our foundational literature where we're going to start. Now we have to determine how much related literature is required. It's because we're going to be focusing just on competencies. We'll need to draw in literature that explains competencies, that explains the usage of competencies in leadership theory. And here we'll be looking at more modern authors. Silzer, Thornton, McClelland is still writing in the field. So you'll find a number of schools of thought with regards to competency models. Now we're moving right along. We've started to narrow it down. We know we're just dealing with competencies. Okay. But which aspect of competencies are going to be important for our collection of literature? So again, just suppose that we've kind of got in the back of our mind that what we want to work on is to try to explore the relationship between competencies theory and leadership style theory, specifically transactional and transformational. So now we're kind of getting a better idea. We're not working with just a vague idea of the area we want to work. We're getting much more specific, and that's an essential element to developing the stream of literature that's going to support this idea. So now we've got to determine the rationale. Why is certain literature being included and other literature isn't? Well, since we're only interested in competencies, and now we've said we're interested in competencies and their effect on a leader's ability to execute a particular style, we only need literature at this point that's going to be related to that. Now we've got a fairly specific direction we're going. We're going to tie the literature together by explaining through the use of the article how it relates to the other articles and how it supports the research topic. And you do this by starting with a thesis statement that says this stream of literature will show that leadership competencies theory provides a proven model for determining specific demonstrated attributes of leaders. And then we're going to build a logical flow from earlier literature to current literature. That provides one leg of the literature streams that we need. The other literature stream is going to come out of leadership styles literature. And when we build both of those legs together, we're going to synthesize them together to try to see if there's a relationship between competencies theory and leadership style theory. Okay. Out of that, then you would have to come up with your specific research question and hypotheses and data collection methods and how you're going to prove that this is true or not true. But that's the process. Now you've got two strong streams of literature. They lead to a particular gap that you're going to explore. If you break it down, and again, this is kind of eye-opening, and you do a search through Google Scholar on management theory, you'll find you end up with about over 3 million results in a half second. So you don't want to deal with 3 million, so you type in strategic management theory. We're breaking all the way down to 2.5 million. Well, you're not going to read 2.5 million articles. You better go a little further. Now we're getting more specific, so we're looking at Porter's strategic management theory, and we get 33,000 results. Porter's 5 forces theory, 31,000 results. So that tells us that a lot of the literature contains that about Porter's theory contains 5 forces. Strategic groups still brings back 28,000. So finally we decide, well, we really need it smaller than that, so we're going to search Mintzberg and Porter. And here we get down to a large but still more manageable 7,220 results. Okay. So you can see how the way you define the area of interest is going to determine whether you're dealing with a huge body or ocean of literature or something more specific that's manageable. And even within this, you would have to select a more specific area that you were going to look at between Mintzberg and Porter to get it down into the hundreds. So the keys to success were week number 4. Well, we're kind of approaching the halfway point in the class, and hopefully things are starting to make sense. And you'll see again that this is, as I've said many times, all preparation for the dissertation. And what I like to do is before students hit their concentration classes to kind of get them prepped up for the ability to identify research streams, to become familiar with the theories and the bodies of literature in the field that they've chosen to work, to start to look for gaps, how things come together, and to be able to write about it also. So the schools of thought, the Mintzberg, the Porter, the Barney schools of thought, will all have similarities and differences. That's the raw ingredients for coming up with new ideas. So you're looking for not only how they're different, but also what ties them together, what the underlying DNA is that makes a logical connection between these various theories. You'll also notice as you're reading that some people will disagree, just as Ansoff disagreed with Mintzberg, and Mintzberg doesn't exactly agree with Porter. That's the purpose of journal articles. That's the purpose of the existence of journals. So that's kind of like the discussion forum for academics to present their own ideas and argue back and forth about who's right and who's wrong. So those shouldn't ignore divergent viewpoints. You should try to understand what the viewpoint of another person is. Now I realize, this is kind of taking it beyond simply reviewing an article or telling me about a theory, but that's not really benefiting you or me. I know what the theories are. I know what the literature is that I have assigned. So what we need to do is kind of go beyond that and find ways of utilizing what other people have done as the raw ingredients for coming up with new ideas. So of course I expect you to use sources from previous weeks. These are all related together, and you should be able to kind of establish a continuity in the literature, which is kind of the idea of the stream of literature. And because we're approaching the halfway point in the class, it's time to recognize our accomplishments, look forward to the future, and put a little bit of dancing into the classroom. So until next time, bye and good luck.